The rain had been falling on Chicago for 3 days straight. Not the dramatic, cleansing kind of rain that washes away sins in movies, but the persistent gray drizzle that seeps into your bones and makes everything feel heavier than it is. Sarah Mitchell stood at the window of her studio apartment on the south side, watching droplets race down the glass, wondering which one would reach the bottom first. It was 4:47 a.m., and she hadn't needed an alarm clock in years. Her body just knew when it was time. The apartment was small, barely 400 square feet, but it was hers. Or rather, it was the landlord's. But she'd been paying rent on time for 6 years, which in this neighborhood was something close to ownership. The walls were thin enough that she could hear Mrs. Chen upstairs padding around in her slippers, starting her own morning routine. The radiator clanked and hissed, providing just enough heat to keep the November cold at bay, but not enough to actually feel warm. Sarah moved through her morning ritual with the efficiency of someone who had done it 1,000 times. Shower, 3 minutes, because hot water cost money. Coffee, instant black, no sugar. Toast, 1 slice, butter spread thin. She stood at the counter eating, looking at the bulletin board she'd hung above her microwave. Pinned there were reminders of a different life, or maybe a life she'd hoped to have. A brochure for community college, now 2 years out of date. A business card from a photography studio where she'd once inquired about apprenticeships. A faded photo of her mother, smiling in a garden that didn't exist anymore. Stop it, she told herself quietly, dumping the coffee mug in the sink. Just stop. The walk to Rosie's diner took 23 minutes. Sarah had timed it dozens of times, adjusting for weather, time of day, her own energy levels. In rain, it took 25. She left at 5:30 a.m. to clock in by 6 a.m. sharp, because Rosie didn't tolerate lateness, and Sarah couldn't afford to lose this job. Not again. The streets of Bridgeport were just beginning to wake up. Streetlights still glowed orange against the gray morning, creating halos in the mist. A garbage truck rumbled past, its workers calling to each other in Polish. The corner store, Martinez Groceries, had its lights on, and through the window Sarah could see old Mr. Martinez arranging produce, the same careful movements he'd been making for 30 years. This was her world. Small, predictable, safe. Every crack in the sidewalk was familiar. Every storefront told a story she knew by heart. The boarded-up laundromat that used to be a dance studio. The Vietnamese restaurant that changed owners every 18 months. The church with the crooked cross that nobody ever fixed. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter, a thin windbreaker that had seen better days, and kept walking. Rosie's diner sat on the corner of 31st and Morgan, a relic from the 1960s that stubbornly refused to modernize or die. The neon sign, Rosie's in cursive pink script with a coffee cup that no longer lit up, flickered in the rain. The building itself was narrow, squeezed between a pawn shop and a shuttered barber shop, with windows that fogged up in winter and let in too much heat in summer. Inside, the air smelled like coffee, bacon grease, and something else. The accumulated scent of 50 years of meals, conversations, arguments, and deals. The floor was checkered black and white linoleum, cracked in places and worn smooth in others. The counter ran the length of the diner, with 12 red vinyl stools that spun if you sat on them right. 8 booths lined the window side, their red vinyl patched with duct tape in various places. "You're early," Rosie called from the kitchen. She was 68, built like a fire hydrant, with gray hair always pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. She'd owned the diner for 42 years. Bought it with settlement money from a lawsuit nobody ever talked about. "Rain," Sarah replied, hanging her jacket on the hook in the back. She tied her apron, black with Rosie's embroidered in faded pink thread, and grabbed the coffee pot. "Always rain with you," Rosie muttered, but there was no real criticism in it. "Table 4 needs setup. Eddie's coming in at 7 instead of 8. His daughter's got a school thing." Eddie was the cook, a quiet man in his 50s who made the best hash browns on the south side and never talked about where he'd learned to cook. Sarah nodded and began her opening routine. Fill the napkin dispensers, check the salt and pepper shakers, make sure the ketchup bottles were full and wiped clean. The first customers trickled in at 6:15, regulars mostly. Tommy Chen, who worked construction and ordered the same thing every day. 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, side of bacon, coffee with cream. Mrs. Washington, who came in after her night shift at the hospital and sat in booth 7, always booth 7, reading her romance novels and drinking decaf. Ray and Pete, the postal workers, who sat at the counter and argued about sports teams with the passion of people who had nothing else to argue about. Sarah knew their orders, their habits, their small talk. She poured coffee before they asked, brought extra cream for Mrs. Washington, made sure Ray got the sports section of the Tribune that someone always left behind. "You're quiet today," Tommy observed as Sarah refilled his coffee. "Quieter than usual." "Just tired," Sarah said, which was true enough. She was always tired. Tired in her bones, tired in her mind, the kind of tired that sleep didn't fix. "You still doing that photography thing?" Mrs. Washington asked without looking up from her book. "You should do that. You got an eye for it." Sarah felt something twist in her chest. "Maybe someday." "Someday never comes if you keep saying someday," Mrs. Washington said, turning a page. "Trust me on that one." The morning shift continued its familiar rhythm. Orders called out, plates delivered, coffee poured, small talk exchanged. The rain kept falling outside, turning the street into a blur of gray and reflected light. Sarah moved through it all on autopilot, her mind somewhere else, somewhere far away from this diner, this neighborhood, this life. At 11:47 a.m., Rosie told her to take a break. "Lunch rush is in 20 minutes, Sarah protested. "Which is why you take a break now. Go, sit, eat something." Sarah sat in the back booth, the one the staff used, with a plate of scrambled eggs she wasn't hungry for. She pulled out her phone, an old model with a cracked screen, and scrolled through messages she'd already read. Her best friend Keisha had texted, "Still on for Saturday? Movie and terrible Chinese food?" Sarah smiled slightly and typed back, "Always." Through the window she watched the city move. A mother hurrying past with 2 kids bundled against the rain. A man in a suit talking urgently on his phone. A police car rolling slowly down Morgan Street. The officers inside scanning the sidewalks with professional boredom. This was life. This was real. Predictable, small, safe. Sarah had no way of knowing that in 13 minutes, everything would change. The lunch rush hit at 12:15, right on schedule. The diner filled with the usual crowd. Office workers from the insurance company 2 blocks over. Construction crews from the development site on Halsted. Students from the community college looking for cheap food. The noise level rose. Conversations overlapping, silverware clinking. The bell in the kitchen ringing as Eddie called out orders. Sarah was carrying 3 plates balanced on her arms, a skill that had taken months to master, when the door opened. The first thing she noticed was the silence. Not complete silence. The diner was too full for that, but a sudden drop in volume, like someone had turned down the dial. Conversations didn't stop completely, but they got quieter, more careful. People glanced toward the door and then away, suddenly very interested in their food. 3 men entered. No, Sarah corrected herself, watching them navigate between tables. Not just men. Men with presence. The kind of people who take up more space than their physical bodies should occupy. The one in front was older, maybe 60, with silver hair combed straight back and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He wore an expensive coat. Cashmere, Sarah thought, though she'd never actually touched cashmere, and moved with the careful deliberation of someone whose body hurt, but who refused to show it. His eyes swept the diner with the practiced assessment of someone who always knew the exits, always counted the people, always calculated the angles. Behind him came 2 younger men, both in their 30s, both wearing dark suits that fit too well to be off the rack. They flanked him naturally, like this was a formation they'd walked in 1,000 times. The one on the left had a scar along his jawline. The one on the right kept his hands in his pockets. They took booth 3 by the window. The older man slid in first, his back to the wall facing the door. The 2 younger men sat across from him, blocking him from view of the street. Sarah felt her heartbeat pick up, though she couldn't have said exactly why. There was nothing overtly threatening about them. They weren't loud. They weren't aggressive. They were just wrong somehow. Out of place in this diner the same way a shark would be out of place in a bathtub. "Table 3, Rosie said quietly, appearing at Sarah's elbow. The older woman's face was carefully neutral. "Just be polite. Take their order. That's all." "Who are they?" Sarah whispered. "People who come in sometimes. Just treat them like anyone else." But Sarah could see the tension in Rosie's shoulders, the way her hands gripped the coffee pot just a little too tightly. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this was normal. Sarah took a breath and walked over to booth 3. Up close, she could see more details. The older man's hands resting on the table were scarred across the knuckles. The man with the scar on his jaw had eyes that never stopped moving, cataloging everything, everyone. The one with his hands in his pockets hadn't taken them out yet. "Good afternoon," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Can I get you something to drink?" The older man looked up at her, and Sarah felt pinned by his gaze. His eyes were pale blue, almost gray, and they studied her with an intensity that made her want to step back, but she held her ground. "Coffee," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel being ground underfoot. "Black." "Same," said Scarjaw. The third man just nodded. Sarah's hand shook slightly as she poured the coffee. "Don't spill it," she thought. "Please don't spill it." She didn't, but it was close. "Do you need a few minutes with the menu?" she asked. The older man waved a hand dismissively. "Just coffee." Sarah nodded and retreated, feeling their eyes on her back. At the counter, Rosie was serving 2 construction workers, her movements quick and efficient, but Sarah saw how her gaze kept flicking toward booth 3. The diner had returned to its normal volume, but there was still an undercurrent of awareness. People were eating, talking, living their lives, but part of everyone's attention remained on those 3 men by the window. Sarah busied herself with other tables, refilling water glasses, taking orders, delivering food, but her awareness kept circling back to booth 3. The men sat in silence, drinking their coffee. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't check their phones. They just sat waiting for something. At 1:17 p.m., the older man's phone rang. He answered it, listened, said 3 words, 20 minutes, understood, and hung up. He stood slowly, carefully, like someone whose body didn't cooperate the way it used to. The 2 younger men stood with him, moving in sync. That's when Sarah saw it happen. The older man took 1 step away from the table and stopped. His hand went to his chest, fingers splaying against the fabric of his expensive coat. His face, already pale, went white. "Boss," said Scarjaw, reaching for him. The older man's knees buckled. Not dramatically, not like in movies, just a sudden loss of strength, his body folding in on itself. The 2 younger men caught him, lowering him to the floor with surprising gentleness. The diner erupted into chaos. People stood, chairs scraping. Someone screamed. Someone else shouted, "Call 911." Sarah was moving before she thought about it, pushing through the crowd that was forming. Medical training kicked in, the CPR certification she'd gotten 3 years ago, hoping it might help her get a better job. She dropped to her knees beside the man. "Give him space," she said, her voice loud and firm. Everyone stepped back. The 2 younger men looked at her with something between suspicion and desperation. "Who are you?" demanded Scarjaw. "I'm certified in first aid. Let me help." The older man's eyes were open but unfocused. His breathing was rapid and shallow. Sarah checked his pulse, fast, irregular. She saw sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, leaning close. "What's your name?" His eyes found hers, and for a moment, there was startling clarity in them. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. He pulled her down, his mouth close to her ear. "Don't call anyone," he whispered. The words were barely audible, just a breath of sound. "Don't call." His grip loosened. His eyes rolled back. He slumped against the floor, unconscious. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "Someone call 911, she shouted, even as her brain screamed at her that he'd just told her not to. "Already calling." Rosie's voice came from somewhere behind her. Scarjaw grabbed Sarah's shoulder, his grip tight enough to hurt. "What did he say to you?" Nothing. He didn't say anything." "You're lying." I saw his lips move. "What did he say?" "I couldn't hear him, I don't know." The man with his hands in his pockets, they were out now, leaned down, his face inches from Sarah's. "This is very important. What did he tell you?" "I don't know." Sarah's voice cracked. "I couldn't understand him. Please, just let me help him." But she was lying. She knew she was lying, and she could see in their eyes that they knew it too. The next few minutes blurred together. Sarah tried to keep the man stable, checking his breathing, his pulse. The 2 younger men hovered, watching her every move with hawk-like intensity. The other diner patrons pressed back, giving space but not leaving, held by the morbid fascination of witnessing something terrible. Rosie appeared with a folded jacket, placing it under the man's head. "Ambulance is 3 minutes out," she said quietly. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Sarah knelt there, her knees on the cold linoleum, her hand on the unconscious man's wrist, feeling his pulse flutter erratically. She could feel the 2 younger men watching her, weighing her, calculating something she didn't understand. "You're the waitress," said the man with hands that were no longer in his pockets. It wasn't a question. "You work here?" "Yes." "You live nearby?" Sarah's blood ran cold. Why does that matter? Answer the question. Yes. In Bridgeport. The two men exchanged a look, some silent communication passing between them. Sirens approached, growing louder. The tension in the diner ratcheted up another notch. Sarah saw Scarjaw's hand move to his jacket, then stop. A decision made, then reconsidered. The paramedics came through the door with practiced efficiency, all business and calm professionalism. Sarah stood, stepping back, her legs unsteady. She watched as they assessed the unconscious man, asking questions. How long has he been unconscious? Any known medical conditions? Did he take anything? That the two younger men answered in careful, minimal words. A female paramedic, maybe 30, with her hair pulled back in a ponytail, glanced at Sarah. You the one who called it in? No, yes. Someone called. I just tried to help. You did good. Kept him stable. The paramedic returned to her work, sliding an oxygen mask over the man's face. They loaded him onto a stretcher with careful efficiency. The two younger men moved to follow. Scarjaw paused, turning back to Sarah. He pulled something from his pocket. A business card, plain white with just a phone number embossed on it. No name, no company. Just 10 digits. You remember anything he said? Scarjaw told her, his voice low and urgent. You call this number. Immediately. You understand? Sarah took the card with numb fingers. I told you I couldn't hear. If you remember, he repeated. You call. Your safety might depend on it. Then they were gone, following the stretcher out into the rain. The ambulance doors closed. The sirens wailed. And just like that, the diner returned to something approximating normal. Except it wasn't normal. It would never be normal again. The rest of Sarah's shift passed in a fog. People talked around her, asking questions she answered on autopilot. A police officer came, young, looking barely old enough to shave, and took a statement. Name, address. What had she seen? What had she heard? Did the man say anything to you? The officer asked. Pen poised over his notebook. Sarah felt the business card burning in her apron pocket. No, she lied. He was unconscious. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. She'd never been a good liar. But something in her gut, some instinct she didn't know she possessed, told her that telling the truth would be dangerous. More dangerous than lying to a police officer. The officer made some notes and left. The lunch crowd gradually dispersed. By 3 p.m., the diner was nearly empty again. Just a few regulars nursing coffee and pretending they hadn't witnessed anything unusual. Rosie found Sarah in the back, sitting on an overturned milk crate, staring at nothing. You okay? Rosie asked. I don't know. What did he say to you? Sarah looked up sharply. Everyone keeps asking me that. Because everyone saw him say something. His mouth moved. You leaned in close. So what did he say? Sarah's hands twisted together in her lap. Rosie, I really don't... Sarah. Rosie's voice was firm but not unkind. I've been running this diner for 42 years. You know what I've learned? Sometimes you see things. Sometimes you hear things. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is forget both. I don't understand. That man who collapsed? I've seen him 3 times in the last 6 months. Always with those same 2 men. Always careful. Always watching. You know what kind of people are always watching? Sarah shook her head, though she had a sinking feeling she did know. The kind of people you don't want to remember you, Rosie said. So whatever he said to you, maybe you didn't hear it. Maybe you were too focused on helping to catch the words. Maybe it was just nonsense from a man having a medical emergency. You understand? But they gave me a number to call. Then lose the number. Sarah, listen to me. I like you. You're a good worker, and you deserve better than this job. But you're also young and you think the world makes sense. It doesn't. And people like that man, they live in a part of the world that makes even less sense than usual. Sarah pulled the business card from her pocket, looking at the single phone number embossed on expensive cardstock. He told me not to call anyone. Those were his words. Don't call anyone. Rosie was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed, a sound that carried years of weariness. And are you going to listen? I don't know. Well, you better figure it out, because something tells me this isn't over. Sarah's shift ended at 4 p.m. She changed out of her apron, put on her thin jacket, and stepped out into the rain. The street looked the same as it had that morning. The same cracked sidewalk, the same familiar storefronts, the same gray sky. But it all felt different now, like she was seeing it through a warped lens. She walked home, the business card in her pocket feeling like it weighed 10 pounds. Her mind kept replaying the moment, his hand gripping her wrist, his breath hot against her ear. Those 3 words that made no sense. Don't call anyone. But call who? The police. They'd already been called. The ambulance? Same thing. So what had he meant? Unless... Sarah stopped walking, standing in the middle of the sidewalk while rain soaked through her jacket. Unless he'd meant don't call anyone from his world. Don't contact his people. Don't reach out. But why? And why tell her? A waitress who was a complete stranger. She started walking again, faster now. Her apartment building came into view, its familiar shabby exterior somehow menacing now. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs, her wet shoes squeaking on the linoleum. Inside her apartment, Sarah locked the door, then checked it twice. She pulled the curtains closed. She stood in the middle of her small space, dripping on the floor, and pulled out the business card. Just a number. No name. No explanation. She should throw it away. That's what Rosie had advised. And Rosie was smart. She'd survived in this neighborhood for 4 decades. She knew things. But Sarah's fingers wouldn't release the card. Instead, she found herself pulling out her phone. She didn't dial the number. Not yet. But she entered it into her contacts, saving it under a single letter. X. Then she sat on her bed, still in her wet clothes, and tried to process what had happened. A man had collapsed in front of her. That part was clear. He'd whispered something to her. That part was also clear. And now 2 men who looked like they could make problems disappear had her name, her workplace, her neighborhood. What had she stumbled into? Night fell early in November. By 5:30 p.m. it was fully dark, the streetlights casting pools of orange light on wet pavement. Sarah had changed into dry clothes, sweatpants and an old college sweatshirt from a school she'd never attended, bought at a thrift store. She'd made dinner, ramen noodles with an egg stirred in, the extent of her culinary abilities, and eaten it without tasting anything. Now she sat by her window, curtain pulled back just enough to see the street below. She told herself she was being paranoid, told herself that Rosie was right, that she should just forget the whole thing. The man had probably been having a heart attack or a stroke. His words had probably been the confused rambling of someone in medical distress. The 2 men with him had probably just been protective associates, worried about their boss or friend or whatever he was. Probably. But Sarah kept watching the street anyway. At 7:23 p.m., she saw it. A black car, expensive looking, driving slowly down her street. Too slowly. It passed her building once, then circled the block and passed again. Her heart started hammering. It's nothing, she told herself. Just someone lost. Looking for an address. The car passed a 3rd time. Sarah stepped back from the window, her breath coming faster. She was being ridiculous. Paranoid. There was no reason to think that car had anything to do with her. Except there was. Because men in expensive coats didn't collapse in diners in Bridgeport by accident. And men with scars on their jaws didn't give out business cards with untraceable numbers unless they expected those numbers to be used. Her phone buzzed, making her jump. She grabbed it, heart in her throat. Text from Keisha. You okay? You've been weird all day. Sarah stared at the message. How could she possibly explain? She typed back. Long day. Just tired. Want to talk? Tomorrow. Promise. She set the phone down and returned to the window. The black car was gone. The street was empty except for Mrs. Chen's son, parking his beat-up Honda across the street. Normal. Everything was normal. Sarah went through her evening routine mechanically. Shower. Teeth brushed. Set the alarm for 4:47 a.m. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of her building settling around her. Mrs. Chen's television, muffled through the ceiling. Pipes clanking. Someone's bass music thumping distantly. The radiator's sporadic hissing. Normal sounds. Comforting sounds. But Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about pale blue eyes. About a hand gripping her wrist. About 3 words that didn't make sense. Don't call anyone. At 11:47 p.m., exactly 12 hours after she'd taken her break at the diner, Sarah heard something that wasn't normal. Footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment. Slow. Deliberate. Stopping right outside her door. She sat up, barely breathing. A shadow moved in the gap under her door. Someone was standing there. Just standing. Sarah's hand moved to her phone, fingers hovering over the screen. Should she call 911? But what would she say? Someone standing outside my door? That wasn't a crime. The shadow moved away. The footsteps receded down the hall. Sarah waited 5 minutes, then 10, then 15. When she finally worked up the courage to look through her peephole, The hallway was empty, but tucked under her door was a single piece of paper, folded once. Sarah's hands shook as she picked it up. She unfolded it slowly, half expecting, she didn't know what, a threat, a warning. Instead, there were just 7 words, written in neat, precise handwriting. He's stable. They know you heard. Careful. No signature. No explanation. Sarah turned the paper over. Nothing on the back. She checked the hallway again, still empty. She locked her door, checked it twice, then pushed her small dresser against it for good measure. Then she sat on her bed, the note in one hand and her phone in the other, and finally admitted what she'd been denying all day. She was in danger. She didn't understand why. She didn't understand from what. But she understood the basic truth. A stranger had collapsed in front of her, whispered a warning, and now people were watching her building, leaving notes under her door, letting her know she'd been noticed. Sarah looked at her phone, at the contact saved as X. 1 call. That's all it would take. 1 call to that number and maybe she'd get answers. Maybe she'd get help, or maybe she'd get something much worse. The rain continued to fall outside, tapping against her window like fingers trying to get in. Sarah sat in the darkness of her apartment, trying to decide which scared her more, making that call or not making it. Sarah didn't sleep. Not really. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her mind cycling through the events of the previous day like a film reel stuck on repeat. Every time she started to sink toward actual sleep, her eyes would snap open, her heart racing, convinced she'd heard footsteps in the hallway again. At 4:47 a.m., her body woke her as usual, but this time she felt different, heavier, like the air in her apartment had thickened overnight, making every movement require extra effort. She sat on the edge of her bed, the mysterious note still on her nightstand where she'd placed it before attempting sleep. In the gray pre-dawn light, the handwriting looked different, less threatening, more matter-of-fact. Just information, a warning from someone who, for reasons she couldn't fathom, wanted her to be careful. But careful of what? And careful from whom? Sarah went through her morning routine on autopilot, but everything felt wrong. The coffee tasted bitter. The toast stuck in her throat. Even the familiar sounds of Mrs. Chen upstairs felt ominous rather than comforting. She kept looking at her phone, at the contact saved as X, her thumb hovering over the call button. What would happen if she called? Who would answer? What would they want from her? And more importantly, what had that man meant by, "Don't call anyone"? The words had been so urgent, so specific. Don't call anyone. Not don't call the police or don't call for help. Just anyone. Sarah pulled on her jacket, checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror, and barely recognized herself. Her eyes had dark circles underneath them. Her skin looked pale, almost gray. She looked like someone who'd seen something they shouldn't have, which she supposed was exactly what she was. The walk to Rosie's diner felt different this morning. Every car that passed made her tense. Every person on the street seemed to look at her too long. The black car from last night wasn't there. She'd checked 3 times, but that almost made it worse. Where was it? Who had been driving it? At the corner of 29th and Morgan, Sarah stopped abruptly. A man in a gray coat was standing across the street reading a newspaper. Nothing unusual about that, except nobody read physical newspapers anymore. And he wasn't really reading. His eyes kept flicking up, scanning the street, then back down to the paper. Sarah started walking again, faster. When she reached the next corner and glanced back, the man was gone. Paranoia, she told herself. You're being paranoid. But the note under her door hadn't been paranoia. The business card in her pocket wasn't paranoia. The 3 words whispered in her ear weren't paranoia. She reached Rosie's at 5:52 a.m., 8 minutes earlier than usual. The diner was dark except for the kitchen light in back. Rosie's car, a 15-year-old Buick that rattled when it idled, sat in its usual spot in the tiny parking lot. Sarah used her key to enter, the familiar bell above the door chiming. The diner felt different too, smaller somehow, more confined, like the walls had moved in during the night. Early, Rosie's voice called from the kitchen. Couldn't sleep? Something like that. Rosie appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. She studied Sarah with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. You look terrible. Thanks. I mean it. You look like you've been up all night. This about yesterday? Sarah hung up her jacket, tied her apron. Someone left a note under my door last night. Rosie's expression didn't change, but Sarah saw her shoulders tense. What kind of note? The kind that says people know I heard something. The kind that says to be careful. Show me. Sarah pulled the folded paper from her pocket. Rosie took it, read it quickly, then read it again more slowly. When she looked up, her face was grave. Sarah, listen to me very carefully. You need to take a few days off. What? I can't afford. Paid. I'll pay you. Just take a few days, get out of town, visit a friend, go somewhere these people won't know to look. Rosie, I don't understand what's happening. Who are these people? What did I get involved in? Rosie was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed, folded the note and handed it back. You know the Castellano family? Sarah shook her head. Good. That means you're smart enough not to pay attention to things that don't concern you. The Castellanos have been in Chicago for 70 years. They're business people. Import, export, real estate, restaurants. All legitimate, all above board. But they're also the kind of business people who have other business. The kind nobody talks about. The kind where if someone collapses in a diner and whispers something to a waitress, people pay attention. Sarah felt cold spreading through her chest. The man from yesterday, he's Castellano. Vincent Castellano, the head of the family. Or he was until yesterday. Word on the street is he's in ICU at Northwestern Memorial. Stroke, they're saying. Bad one. And the two men with him? His nephew Marco, the one with the scar, and Anthony Russo, his driver. Both loyal. Both dangerous if you cross them. But also, Rosie hesitated, also the kind of men who respect certain things. Honor. Debts. People who help when they didn't have to. I was just doing what anyone would do. Exactly. Which means they probably see you as, I don't know, an innocent. Someone who got caught up in something by accident. But Sarah, that doesn't mean you're safe. Because if Vincent told you something before he passed out, and if that something is important, then you're valuable. And valuable can be just as dangerous as being a threat. Sarah leaned against the counter, her legs suddenly weak. What am I supposed to do? Take the few days off, let things settle. These situations, they have a way of resolving themselves. Vincent either wakes up or he doesn't. The family either stabilizes or it doesn't. But either way, in a few days, you'll be old news. Just another witness to another medical emergency. It made sense, it was logical. It was the smart thing to do. So why did Sarah feel like running away was exactly the wrong choice? Sarah worked her shift in a daze. The usual morning regulars came in. Tommy Chen, Mrs. Washington, Ray, and Pete. She poured coffee, took orders, delivered food, made small talk. But part of her mind was always elsewhere, always cycling through her options. Option 1, take Rosie's advice. Leave town for a few days. Hope this all blows over. Option 2, call the number on the business card. Get answers. Maybe get help. Option 3, go to the police. Tell them everything. Let them handle it. Except option 3 felt wrong the moment she thought of it. Vincent Castellano had told her specifically not to call anyone. And if Rosie was right about corruption in law enforcement, she hadn't said it directly, but Sarah could read between the lines, then going to the police might be the most dangerous thing she could do. At 10:15 a.m., the decision was made for her. A man walked into the diner, not one of the regulars, mid-40s with dark hair going gray at the temples, wearing a navy suit that was expensive but not flashy. He had the same careful awareness as the men from yesterday, eyes scanning the room, cataloging exits, assessing threats. But something about him felt different, less aggressive, more measured. He sat at the counter, 2 stools away from Ray and Pete. When Sarah approached with the coffee pot, he smiled. It was a tired smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. Coffee, please, black. Sarah poured, her hand steady, despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. Do you need a menu? No, thank you, just coffee. And a moment of your time when you have it. Sarah's heart started hammering. I'm working. I can see that. I can wait. He said it easily, casually, but Sarah heard the steel underneath. This wasn't a request. This was a polite command. She served 2 more tables, refilled water glasses, put in an order for table 6. All the while, she felt the man's eyes on her. Not threatening exactly, more like evaluating. Finally, during a lull, Rosie nodded toward the back. Take your break. The man stood when Sarah did, following her to the back booth, the staff booth. They sat across from each other, and Sarah felt trapped, even though she could see the front door from here, could see Rosie watching from behind the counter. My name is Daniel Russo, the man said. Anthony from yesterday. He's my younger brother. Sarah said nothing, waiting. You helped Mr. Castellano yesterday. My brother told me. He said you were calm, professional, that you knew what to do. I'm CPR certified. More than that, you kept your head when others panicked. That matters. Daniel pulled out his phone, swiped to a photo, turned it so Sarah could see. It showed an older man in a hospital bed. Tubes and wires everywhere, eyes closed. Vincent Castellano. He's alive because of you. Because you kept him stable until the paramedics arrived. I just did what anyone would. Please. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. Let's not pretend. You did something remarkable. And Mr. Castellano, in what might have been his last conscious moment, told you something. We need to know what. There it was. The real reason for this visit. Sarah chose her words carefully. He told me not to call anyone. Daniel's expression didn't change, but Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise? Concern? Those were his exact words? Yes. Don't call anyone. Then he passed out. And did you? Call anyone? The paramedics were already being called. I didn't call anyone else. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, studying her. Sarah felt like she was being x-rayed. Every thought and feeling laid bare. You're afraid, he finally said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Good. Fear keeps you careful. But Sarah, may I call you Sarah? You need to understand something. What you witnessed yesterday, what Mr. Castellano told you, it puts you in a very delicate position. I don't want to be in any position. I just want to go back to my normal life. I know, I believe you. But the problem is, normal life isn't an option right now. Because there are people who need to know you're not a threat. And there are other people who need to believe you might be useful. And both groups are going to be watching you. Sarah felt the weight of those words settle on her chest. What do I do? First, you trust me. I know that's asking a lot. But my family, the Russos, we've worked with the Castellanos for 3 generations. We're not what you probably think we are. Yes, we operate in gray areas. Yes, we do things that exist outside normal society. But we have rules. Honor. We don't hurt innocent people. Forgive me if I don't find that completely reassuring. Daniel's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. Fair enough. Let me put it differently. Mr. Castellano is like a father to me. I've known him since I was 8 years old. He taught me how to play chess. He came to my college graduation. When my wife died 5 years ago, he sat with me for 3 days straight. Didn't say a word. Just sat there so I wouldn't be alone. Sarah saw real emotion in Daniel's eyes now. Real grief. The fact that his last conscious words were to protect you, Daniel continued. That means something. It means he saw something in you. Innocence, maybe. Or maybe he just recognized someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time and didn't want you to pay for his mistakes. What mistakes? Daniel glanced around the diner, then back to Sarah. Not here. Not now. But I need you to understand. When Mr. Castellano told you not to call anyone, he wasn't being paranoid. He was protecting you. Because right now, in our world, there are people who can't be trusted. People in law enforcement. People in our own organization. People who would use you to get to him. Why would they use me? I don't know anything. You know he said something. That's enough. They'll want to know what. And they'll assume he told you more than he did. Sarah's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. This is insane. This is my life. I can't be part of this. I know. And I'm sorry, but you are part of it now, whether you want to be or not. So the question is, do you want to face it alone, or do you want help? Sarah stared at Daniel Russo, trying to read his face, his intentions. Everything about this felt wrong. Everything about this went against every instinct she had about staying safe, staying out of trouble, staying invisible. But another part of her, the part that had taken CPR certification hoping to become an EMT, the part that had once dreamed of being a photojournalist, documenting real stories, the part that was tired of being invisible, that part was curious. What kind of help? She asked quietly. Protection, first. People watching your building, making sure nobody approaches you who shouldn't. Information, second. We can tell you who to avoid, who to trust, what's really happening. And third, Daniel hesitated. Third, we can make sure that when this is over, you can actually go back to your normal life, that you're not looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. And what do you want in return? Honesty. If you remember anything else Mr. Castellano said, anything at all, we need to know. And if anyone approaches you, anyone, you contact us immediately. Sarah thought about the note under her door, about the black car circling her building, about the man with the newspaper who wasn't really reading. Someone already has, she said. Last night, they left a note under my door. Daniel's expression went hard. Show me. Sarah pulled the note from her pocket. Daniel read it, his jaw tightening. Did you see who left it? No. I heard footsteps, then they were gone. When I looked, just the note. This is good handwriting. Educated. Someone with care for details. Daniel pulled out his phone, took a photo of the note. May I keep this? Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Daniel pocketed the note and leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. Sarah, I need you to understand how serious this is. Mr. Castellano didn't have a stroke. He was poisoned. The words hit Sarah like a slap. What? The doctors ran tests, found traces of something in his blood, something that induced the symptoms of a stroke. Someone tried to eliminate him and they did it in public, in a place where witnesses would just assume medical emergency. But who? That's what we're trying to figure out. There are factions within the organization. People who think Mr. Castellano is too old, too soft. People who want to take the family in a different direction, more aggressive, more violent, more willing to cross lines that Mr. Castellano never would. Sarah's mind was reeling. And you think whoever poisoned him knows that he spoke to me? We know they know. The note proves it. They know you heard. That's not generic. That's specific. Someone wants you to know you're being watched, either to intimidate you into silence, or to see what you'll do. This is insane. I'm a waitress. I make minimum wage plus tips. I live in a 400-square-foot apartment. I'm nobody. You're the last person Vincent Castellano spoke to before losing consciousness. In our world, that makes you very much somebody. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. I need to go. But Sarah, please think about what I said. We can protect you, but only if you let us. He stood, pulled out his wallet, left a $100 bill on the table. For the coffee and your time. My number is on that card my brother gave you. Please, call it. Tonight. Even if just to talk. You shouldn't be alone in this. Then he was gone, walking out of the diner with the same careful awareness he'd entered with. Sarah sat there staring at the $100 bill, her thoughts churning. Poisoned. Vincent Castellano had been poisoned, which meant someone had tried to eliminate him, which meant there was a power struggle, which meant people were willing to cross serious lines to get what they wanted, and she was in the middle of it. Rosie appeared at the table. What did he want? To offer me protection. Are you going to take it? Sarah looked up at her boss, this woman who'd survived 42 years in this neighborhood by knowing when to see things and when to look away. What would you do? Rosie sat down across from her, something she rarely did during business hours. You want the truth? I'd take it. Because men like Daniel Russo, they don't make offers like that lightly. If he says you need protection, you probably do. And if he's offering it, it means he sees value in keeping you safe. That's what scares me. What value? What do they think I know? Maybe nothing. Maybe it's just about doing right by someone who helped when they didn't have to. The Castellanos. They're old school. They believe in debts, honor. You saved Vincent's life, or at least tried to. That creates an obligation. Sarah thought about that. An obligation. A debt. In some ways it made sense. In other ways, it terrified her. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Black Honda Civic, license plate 847HNK, parked across from your building. Not one of ours. Be careful. Sarah's blood ran cold. She showed the phone to Rosie. That's from them, Rosie said quietly. From the Russos. They're already watching out for you. Without my permission. Did you want them to wait for permission while someone else made a move? Sarah didn't have an answer for that. The rest of Sarah's shift was a blur of anxiety and hyper-awareness. Every customer who walked in got scrutinized. Every car that passed outside got noted. She found herself memorizing license plates, facial features, patterns of behavior. This was insane. This was not her life. Her life was simple, predictable, safe. Except it wasn't anymore. At 3:47 p.m. another text came from the unknown number. Black Honda left 20 minutes ago, replaced by gray Nissan. Same pattern, different watchers. Sarah typed back, "Who is this?" The response was immediate. "Daniel, we're monitoring the situation. You're safe for now." For now. Those two words carried a weight Sarah didn't want to contemplate. Her shift ended at 4 p.m. She changed out of her apron, pulled on her jacket, and stepped out into the afternoon. The sky was gray again. It seemed like the sky was always gray lately, and a cold wind blew off the lake, cutting through her thin jacket. Sarah walked home, but this time she paid attention, really paid attention. She saw the gray Nissan parked 2 blocks from her building, engine running, someone sitting in the driver's seat. She saw a man in a coffee shop window, laptop open but eyes on the street. She saw patterns she'd never noticed before, or maybe they'd never been there before. Her building felt different when she approached it, less like home, more like a place where things might happen. The lobby, usually empty, had someone in it, a woman Sarah had never seen before checking her mailbox with studied casualness. Sarah climbed the stairs to her apartment, keys ready. At her door she paused, listening. No footsteps, no shadows under the door. She unlocked it, pushed it open carefully, half expecting someone to be inside. The apartment was empty, exactly as she'd left it that morning. Sarah locked the door, checked it twice, pushed the dresser against it. Then she sat on her bed and pulled out her phone. The contact labeled X stared back at her. One call, that's all it would take. Before she could overthink it, she pressed dial. The phone rang twice. Then a familiar voice answered. Sarah, thank you for calling. Daniel Russo. Not his brother Marco or the driver Anthony. Daniel himself. I need to understand what's happening, Sarah said without preamble. All of it. No more hints. No more careful explanations. The truth. Can you meet me? Somewhere public, somewhere you'd feel safe? Sarah thought about that. Public meant witnesses. Public meant safety, theoretically. Where? There's a coffee shop on 35th and State. Bernie's. Do you know it? She did. It was a neighborhood institution, always busy, always safe. When? 6 p.m.? That gives you time to think, to prepare. And Sarah? Come alone. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not Rosie, not friends, not anyone. How do I know I can trust you? You don't, but you called anyway, which means some part of you already does. 6 p.m. I'll be in the back booth. He hung up. Sarah sat there, phone in hand, wondering what she'd just agreed to. A meeting with a man who'd admitted to operating in gray areas. A man whose family had worked with organized crime for 3 generations. A man who claimed he wanted to help her but also needed something from her. This was a mistake. This was definitely a mistake. But at 5:30 p.m., Sarah found herself changing clothes. Jeans instead of sweatpants, a sweater instead of the thrift store sweatshirt. She brushed her hair. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Who was she becoming? Bernie's coffee shop was exactly as Sarah remembered. Busy, warm, smelling of espresso and fresh pastries. The walls were covered in local art. The tables were mismatched, and the baristas knew half the customers by name. It was the kind of place that felt safe, felt normal, felt like the world made sense. Daniel was already there, sitting in the back booth as promised. He had a coffee in front of him, untouched. When he saw Sarah, he stood, a gesture of respect that surprised her. Thank you for coming, he said as she slid into the booth across from him. I'm not sure I had much choice. You always have a choice. That's important to remember. A barista appeared, Jenny, who Sarah knew from the neighborhood. What can I get you, hun? Chamomile tea, Sarah said. She needed to stay calm, and coffee would just make her more jittery. When Jenny left, Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. I'm going to tell you things that very few people outside our world know. I'm trusting you with this because Mr. Castellano trusted you, and his judgment is rarely wrong. But once you know these things, you can't unknow them. Are you sure you want this? Sarah thought about the note under her door, about the cars watching her building, about the fact that her normal life was already gone whether she acknowledged it or not. Tell me. Daniel nodded. The Castellano family has been in Chicago since 1952. Vincent's grandfather, Angelo, came from Sicily with nothing and built an empire. Restaurants, real estate, import-export. All legitimate. But also, he paused. Also, other services. Protection. Mediation. Solutions to problems that couldn't be solved through official channels. You mean crime. I mean survival. You have to understand when Angelo arrived, there were no laws protecting immigrants. No police willing to help when someone got cheated or attacked. So people like Angelo, they created their own systems, their own justice, and over time, those systems became institutions. Sarah's tea arrived. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup, grateful for something to hold on to. Vincent inherited this system, Daniel continued, but he also tried to change it, legitimize more of the operations, move away from the gray areas. He believed the family could evolve, could become fully legitimate within a generation. Not everyone agreed. The factions you mentioned. Exactly. There are people in the organization who think Vincent's vision is weak. They want to expand into territories we've stayed out of. They want to be more aggressive, more willing to use force. They see his age, his health issues, as an opportunity. So they poisoned him. We believe so. The substance used was sophisticated, something that would mimic natural causes. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't kept him stable, he would have died in that diner, and everyone would have assumed stroke or heart attack. Natural causes for a man his age. Sarah felt sick. But I was there. So what does that change? Everything. Because Vincent survived long enough to get to the hospital, and in the hospital they ran tests, found the poison. Which means now it's not natural causes, it's attempted murder. Which means there will be consequences. Which means whoever did this needs to know what Vincent said in those last conscious moments. Don't call anyone. That's all he said. Think, Sarah. Really think. Was there anything else? A name, a place, anything? Sarah closed her eyes, replaying the moment, his hand gripping her wrist, his breath hot against her ear, the urgency in his voice. Don't call anyone. And then, nothing. Just his grip loosening, his eyes rolling back. No, she said, opening her eyes. That's all. I swear. Daniel studied her face, then nodded, apparently satisfied. Then here's what we think it means. Vincent was telling you not to call anyone from our world, not his people, not his rivals, because he didn't know who was behind the poisoning. He couldn't trust anyone except you, a stranger, an innocent. But I called the paramedics. The police came. That's different. That's outside our world. That's exactly what he wanted. Official channels, documentation, oversight, it protects you and it protects him. Sarah absorbed this. So what happens now? Now we keep you safe while we figure out who's responsible. We've already identified 3 possible factions within the organization. Each has motive. Each has opportunity. We're working to narrow it down. And me? What do? You go back to your normal life as much as possible. Work at the diner. See your friends. But you stay alert. You contact me if anything unusual happens. And you let us handle the protection. What does that mean exactly? Protection? It means there will always be someone watching your building. Someone following you to and from work at a distance. Someone making sure nobody approaches you who shouldn't. Sarah's hands tightened on her teacup. You mean I'm under surveillance? We mean you're being kept safe. There's a difference. Is there? Daniel's expression softened. I know this isn't what you wanted. I know it feels intrusive and scary. But Sarah, the alternative is much worse. These people, whoever poisoned Vincent, they're ruthless. They're willing to eliminate obstacles. Right now, you're potentially an obstacle. Our presence makes you less of a target because it shows you're under our protection. It's a deterrent. And if it's not, if they decide I'm worth the risk, then you'll have trained people nearby who can respond immediately. But it won't come to that. We're very good at what we do. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to stand up and walk away, wanted to go back in time to 2 days ago when her biggest problem was making rent and her biggest dream was maybe taking a photography class. But she couldn't, because Daniel was right. She was already in this. The only question was whether she faced it alone or accepted help. How long? She asked quietly. Until Vincent wakes up and can tell us what happened? Or until we identify and handle whoever's responsible? A week, maybe 2. And then I can go back to normal? Then you can go back to normal, with our gratitude and our protection if you ever need it again. The Castellanos don't forget debts, Sarah. You helped Vincent when he needed it most. That means something. Sarah sipped her tea, barely tasting it. I need to think about this. Of course. But while you're thinking, our people will still be watching. Because whether you officially accept our help or not, we're not going to let anything happen to you. Vincent would never forgive us. He stood, leaving cash on the table for both their drinks. Call me anytime, day or night. That number goes straight to me. And Sarah, I know this is terrifying, but you're stronger than you think. You proved that yesterday in the diner. Then he was gone, leaving Sarah alone with her cooling tea and her racing thoughts. Sarah sat in Bernie's for another 20 minutes, staring into her tea, trying to process everything. Around her, life went on normally. Students studying for exams, couples on dates, friends catching up. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their waitress from Rosie's diner was sitting 5 feet away, embroiled in something out of a crime drama. Her phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. Still weird. What's going on? Sarah stared at the message. What could she possibly say? Hey, so I accidentally got involved with organized crime and now I'm under surveillance. That would go over well. She typed back. Family stuff. Nothing serious. Rain check on Saturday? You know I'm here if you need to talk. I know. Love you. Love you too. Sarah paid for her tea. Daniel's cash more than covered both drinks, and stepped out into the evening. The sky had darkened fully now, streetlights creating pools of yellow light. The air was cold, promising more rain. She started walking toward her apartment, hyper-aware of everything around her. And yes, she saw them now. The watchers. A man across the street keeping pace with her. A car crawling slowly 2 blocks back. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Or maybe they were trying to be visible, trying to let her know she was protected. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it made her feel like prey, circled by predators who claimed to be protectors. Sarah reached her building, climbed the stairs, unlocked her apartment. Inside, she went through the now familiar routine. Lock the door, check it twice, push the dresser against it. Then she sat on her bed and made a decision. She pulled out her phone and called Daniel's number. He answered on the first ring. "Sarah, I'll accept your help," she said, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "First, I need to know who's watching me and when. I need to feel like I have some control over my own life." "Agreed. I'll send you photos and names of our people. You'll always know who's nearby." "Second, if I tell you I need space, need a break from the surveillance, you back off, even if just for an hour." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I can't promise that if we have credible intelligence about a threat, but in normal circumstances, yes. You tell us to pull back, we pull back." "Third, when this is over, when Vincent wakes up or you catch whoever did this, I walk away. Completely. No obligations, no debts, no ties to your world. Sarah, you saved a man's life. That creates a connection whether we acknowledge it or not. But yes, when this is resolved, you're free to return to your life with no expectations from us." Sarah took a deep breath. "Okay, then we have a deal. Thank you. I'll have my people introduce themselves tomorrow. You'll feel better knowing their faces. I hope you're right. Try to get some rest. Tomorrow will be easier. I promise." He hung up. Sarah sat there in the darkness of her apartment, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst one. Only time would tell. Sarah's new reality began the next morning. Daniel introduced her to the protection team, Maria, a former security specialist who watched the day shift, and James, a quiet man who handled nights. They were professional, respectful, keeping their distance but always present. Days blurred together. Sarah worked at Rosie's, went home, lived under the weight of constant surveillance. But something unexpected happened. She began talking to Maria during coffee breaks. Real conversations about life, dreams, the paths that led them to this moment. "I wanted to be a teacher," Maria confessed one afternoon. "Funny how life works out." Sarah shared her own abandoned dreams. Photography, telling stories that mattered. For the first time in years, speaking them aloud made them feel possible again. Then Daniel called with news. Vincent was waking up. But there was a problem. Someone inside the hospital was asking questions. Someone who shouldn't know Vincent could communicate. "We need to move him," Daniel explained. "But we need someone he trusts to be there when he wakes fully. Someone innocent." Sarah understood before he asked. "You need me, only if you're willing. This goes beyond our agreement." Sarah thought of the man who'd used his last conscious breath to protect her. She thought of Maria's friendship, a feeling purposeful for the first time in years. "When do we leave?" The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Sarah sat beside Vincent Castellano's bed, her hand near his. Daniel stood by the door, watching the hallway. Vincent's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, confusion clouded his face. Then recognition dawned. "The waitress," he rasped, his voice weak but clear. "You stayed. You told me not to call anyone," Sarah said softly. "I wanted to understand why." Vincent's lips curved into something resembling a smile. "Smart girl. You knew it meant something." He paused, gathering strength. "My own nephew, Marco. He wanted control, wanted to take the family in directions I wouldn't allow. He thought making it look natural would be clean." Sarah's chest tightened. Marco, who'd seemed so concerned, so loyal. The poison was meant to be untraceable. Vincent continued. "But you kept me alive long enough for tests. You saved me and exposed him without knowing it. I just did what was right." "Exactly. That's why I trusted you in that moment. Pure instinct. You were the only one there with no agenda, no connections, the only safe person." Daniel stepped forward. "Marco's been handled. Quietly. The family is stable. You were right about him, Vincent." Vincent nodded, exhausted. He looked at Sarah again. "What do you want, girl? Name it." Money? A new life somewhere? Anything. Sarah had thought about this moment, what she might ask for. But sitting here, seeing this fragile human man who'd trusted her at his most vulnerable, she knew. "Help me go to school," she said. "Photography program at Columbia College. I want to tell real stories, document real lives. That's all I've ever wanted." Vincent's eyes shone with something that might have been respect. "Done. Full tuition. Living expenses. And when you graduate, you'll owe me nothing. No obligations. No strings. Why? Because you remind me that there's still goodness in this world. That not everything has to be calculated, transactional. You helped because it was right. That's rare. Worth preserving." Sarah stood in Rosie's diner one last time wearing her apron. Her acceptance letter to Columbia's photography program sat in her apartment, tuition guaranteed by an anonymous scholarship. "You sure about this?" Rosie asked, refilling coffee cups. "I'm sure. It's time." Mrs. Washington looked up from her book. "Told you someday would come if you stopped just saying it." Sarah smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "You were right." That evening, she met Daniel at Bernie's coffee shop. He slid an envelope across the table. "First semester housing paid, stipend for equipment, and this." He pulled out a business card different from the others. "My personal number, not for emergencies, just if you ever want to talk. You've been through something extraordinary. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone who understands." "Are we friends now?" Sarah asked, half joking. "I think we might be. Strange as that is." Sarah pocketed the card. "What happens to Marco? He's no longer part of the family, that's all I can say. But he won't bother you or anyone else again. And Vincent? Recovering. Slowly. He asks about you. Wants to see your first gallery show when you have one." Sarah felt unexpected warmth at that. "Tell him I'll send an invitation." Sarah sat in her Columbia dorm, editing photos for her documentary project. Invisible Lives. Stories from Chicago's working class. Her camera focused on people like she used to be. Waitresses, cooks, janitors. People who kept the city running while remaining unseen. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "Coffee this week? I miss our talks." Sarah smiled. The strangest friendships had come from the darkest circumstances. She looked at the photo on her desk. The diner. Rosie behind the counter. Morning light streaming through foggy windows. Her old life, captured forever. She'd been so afraid back then. So small. Now, looking at Chicago's skyline through her window, she felt different. Stronger. Like she'd walked through fire and emerged with purpose. The experience had cost her innocence, yes. She saw the world's complexity now, its moral grays. But it had also given her something precious. The courage to claim the life she'd always wanted. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "Proud of you. V." Sarah's eyes stung. She typed back, "Thank you. For everything." Outside, rain began to fall. The same persistent Chicago drizzle. But this time, Sarah saw it differently. Not as something heavy and oppressive, but as the city's heartbeat. Constant, real, alive. She picked up her camera and headed out. There were stories to tell,